Well, before we get too far down on the model, I want to talk about your experiences because I think they're incredibly inspiring. So tell me a little bit about your experience first in the Army, and then we'll weave a little bit about the Arctic, and then we can go on to talk about any number of companies that you've worked with as well. So tell me about what happened with you in the Army, and in particular, kind of what was key to your success there, flying an Apache helicopter.
Yeah, well, I started out as a cadet in ROTC at Duke University, and I was an English major. I had no intention when I arrived at Duke of ever doing anything in the military, but I had attended a college fair where I saw the ROTC tables along with all the other clubs and fraternities and sororities and things like that, and decided that I knew that finances were tight. I knew that I was already working two jobs and that I should probably give it a try and at least say that I'd tried it. And if I didn't like it, at least I'd given it a go. And so I talked to all three of the ROTC tables, and both Air Force and Navy want you to be go engineering. And I was not interested in going engineering. And the Army said I could be in the liberal arts. So I signed up with Army ROTC, and that was the beginning. And I really did expect to essentially reject it by the end of the first year at the latest. But I ended up really enjoying the connection to the people that were part of the program. The cadre or the instructors were outstanding. And it really was a connection as well to something bigger than myself, which, at that point in your life is, it's important at all times. I think you start to really understand that about that age. So I was a part of ROTC for 4 years. The last two of those, I was also part of the National Guard because my scholarship was a 2-year simultaneous membership program with the National Guard. So I drilled with the Guard as well. And just as I was getting ready to graduate, I drove out to Raleigh, North Carolina to receive my assignment for the years ahead. And the assumption was, of course, I'd take my commission in the National Guard and serve in the Guard. And I remember I was not yet graduated. I was not yet commissioned. I was just a college senior. And I reported to this colonel, and he was 20 years old, behind a desk that seemed as wide as the room and shiny plate glass windows going up behind him, and tried not to shake too much. And I saluted, and he asked me to sit down, and I did. And we exchanged a couple of pleasantries back and forth before the interchange that I would never forget. When he stopped mid-sentence, looked down his nose at me and said, "You realize, cadet, never fly an attack aircraft." And I looked back at him and I recognized his comment for what it was meant to be, which was small and mean and cutting, because at the time attack aircraft weren't open to women to fly. But I had also been around just long enough to realize that there were some times that you say, "Yes, sir." And so I said, "Yes, sir." And I drove back to the campus of Duke University to the Army ROTC detachment and requested a transfer out of the National Guard and onto active duty. And I'll say that that was the beginning of a time that I started to recognize how important it was going to be for me to decide to own my own story. And we'll talk about that, I know, in just a little bit. That for the first time I was having I was aware of an external narrative being imposed on me in a limiting way. And I was not interested in that limiting narrative at all. And I can tell you many, many other anecdotes like that. I could also tell you many anecdotes of people who were pretty spectacular along the way. I worked for some outstanding people. I had some amazing people work for me also. So it was definitely a combination of the two. But that first encounter with that colonel definitely set up a different expectation from what I'd grown up with, which was that I could do anything. And suddenly I was working in an environment where people didn't necessarily want me there at all.